blow in the playoffs.
Just as Leafs Nation was thinking a collective, what the heck is going on with this team? They go and totally redeem themselves, knocking down 3 straight wins. Welcome back, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to the Puckin Leafs Podcast. I'm Joe Cioffs, here with my partner in crime, Coach Frank. Frankie, how are you doing over there? Are you breathing a sigh of relief after these last few wins? I'm sure you're feeling much better this week.
Better, yeah, but you know, I used this on one of my tweets the other day. That scene from The Godfather where he turns around and says, "Just when you think I'm out, they pull me right back in." And I'm not gonna let this team do that to me this time. I know it's 2 big wins, but I'm not there yet. But I'm smiling this week, so it's a start.
They always do it, Frankie. They always have that effect. After they blew that series against Montreal, I was totally done with them.
That was a long summer. Long summer.
You and I have this disease that we just can't quit this team. And we fall right back into the trap of following every news item, every game. Oh, man. I blame my father. He's the reason.
Not mine. You want to talk about a pessimist for this team? Oh, boy.
Oh, mine too. Oh, mine too. It's just... I got this disease from him, I'm pretty sure.
Let's put it this way. My dad, you won't find my dad as a president of the Jake Muzzin and or Justin Hall fan club anytime soon.
Oh, boy. All right, so let's recap. It was a much better week for the Maple Leafs. This weekend, the Maple Leafs had a killer back-to-back set with the Bruins at home on Saturday and the Hurricanes on the road on Sunday. This could have went off the rails really badly, especially Sunday's game against the Hurricanes. You know, they had the travel excuse, they had the early game start time excuse, but the Leafs came up with 2 solid outings against 2 really, really solid teams, 2 of the best teams in the league, quite frankly. And that's not to mention the great game they played against Philadelphia earlier in the week. So let's break it down each game quickly for you. We're not going to do too much of the Philly game. I thought they played well. It was a great way to break that losing streak. But going into Saturday's game against the Bruins, I thought that was probably their best game of the season. Minus the final 10 minutes of the game, I thought they were easily the better team for the majority of that game. And quite frankly, were a bit unlucky to not be up by more than just 1 goal. How did you see that game, Frankie, going down?
Oh, how do I explain this? The Leafs did to Boston what Boston usually does to other teams. And what that means is Boston battles, man. They battle everywhere along the ice. You won't find a team that wins more battles in the corners, in front of the net, open ice. And the Leafs decided to put their hard hats and grab their lunch pills and go to work. And for the first time, I think I can say with confidence, they outwork the Boston Bruins. When's the last time you could have said that about this team, especially, that they outworked the Boston Bruins? Now, please, and this one thing I don't want to hear, we kicked the crap out of the Leafs a lot. It seems like the last, 8, 9 games. But you also got to pat them on the back when they deserve, a good hard-earned victory. But spare me the excuse that the Bruins were... I know you're smiling because you're thinking of spare me. Spare me the excuse that the Bruins were thinking about the, that whole thing with the college kid about that disastrous PR issue, Mitchell Miller, that whole thing. That doesn't fly with me. That's a veteran team, off to a great start. They lost to a team that outworked them that night, and that was the best thing I could say that I from that game. And your big boys came to play. Austin Matthews gave you 2 goals. And when you play teams that are above you in the standings, or in this case, the best team overall standings wise, you want your big guys to show up. And that game was, pretty much textbook that what you can ask for from your big guys getting the job done. And pretty happy to see with that. And lastly, yeah, it's a shame what happened with Samsonov, but up until that point, this was a true test for him. And he got them there, and kudos to Kallgren for coming in cold and finishing that game up. But again, Samsonov in a Saturday night in Toronto against your rival, and he gave you solid goaltending again. So I hope that injury is not too bad, and you get it back in the pipes, because he's become a real stable piece back there. So hoping for the best.
Yeah, there hasn't been any news yet regarding his injury. They've been awfully quiet, which is a little concerning for me. But he finished the rest. He got hurt on the penalty shot. We all assume, and that was earlier in the second period. He ended up finishing the rest of that period. There was still 15 minutes left, so it can't be that bad, right?
If you would have listened to Eric Kallgren's post game comments during the commercial break, one of the breaks before the second period ended, Samsonov came to the bench and told Kallgren, "There's a pretty good chance you're going to start the third, so be ready." So Samsonov knew. So maybe it was precaution. Maybe he felt a pop. I'm not a doctor, but I've had my share of knee injuries and surgeries, and I can tell you, when you know something's wrong, something's wrong. So I hope it's not to that point. But you know what? Maybe Samsonov saying to himself, better to be on the safe side than anything. So again, who knows? But from what I've read and what I've seen, and I'm hoping we can get this out before any news comes out tomorrow, but I heard it's not as bad as initially expected. Even if it's a strain, you're probably looking at 1 week, maybe 2. So that's probably best case scenario.
Okay, awesome. What I really liked about that third period was you get Kallgren coming in, and I didn't know that was happening. Nobody knew that was happening. I was at the game with my son, and he's like, "Hey, Dad, a new goalie's in," and I didn't believe him at first because he's 4, and I didn't think he knew what he was talking about. But lo and behold, he was right. Kallgren was in the net. So then I'm searching Twitter, and yeah, it was true. Samsonov was out. What I loved about it from the Leafs was that they did to the Bruins that period what other teams often do to the Leafs. The Leafs didn't have a lot of puck possession that third period. They didn't have a lot of offensive zone time, but they protected the house. They protected the danger areas of the ice, and they blocked a lot of shots.
Yep.
And the Bruins, I think they had like 8-9 shots that period, but I didn't think they had a ton of great looks at the net. So kudos to the Leafs for really bunkering down and playing good defensive hockey that third period.
I'll do you one better. I read somebody wrote, the Leafs did to the Bruins what the Hurricanes did to the Leafs when David Ayers came in. So good comparison. Thanks for bringing
that was an even better defensive clinic. That was awesome.
That was the Berlin Wall going up.
Yeah.
But in all honesty, you have to look at a team and say they understand what's behind them. And you're putting Kallgren in listen, it doesn't matter who it is, whether it's Kallgren, whether it's Shesterkin, you're coming in cold. It's tough mentally to get prepared for that, but you don't face any shots. It's a tough gig. So kudos to them for collapsing down in front, keeping things to the perimeter, and not even that, killing a couple late penalties too.
Yeah.
That's if anything, that's
horrible calls on those penalties too. Horrible.
So that's a rallying point. Which, if they would have done that and got 2 points out of 4, I would have been thrilled.
Yeah.
But switching over to the next game, which I know we'll do in a second, this takes the cake. So I'll set it up for you.
Well, yeah. Kudos to Kallgren, who I always find when he comes in the middle of a game, always does well for some reason. I was worried about him starting the game on Sunday because I didn't think he had been that great up until Saturday's game. But he was awesome in that start on Sunday against the Hurricanes. I knew it was going to be one of those games where it was going to be a sluggish start for the Leafs, and they were just going to have to hold on and not dig themselves too deep a hole until they could somewhat get themselves back into the game. And that's exactly what happened. Kallgren keeps it close. Hurricanes get a lucky bounce goal, which I'm sure Kallgren would have liked to have back, but it was a fluky goal. And that's all they get. And then finally, the Leafs get that late tying goal of the second period by Calle Jarnkrok. And then you go into the third period tied. It's anybody's game at that point. And the Leaf Stars once again came up with big plays in the third period to escape Raleigh, North Carolina with a big 2 points there. So,
and I want to give a credit finally. Every time you play the Leafs, we always see a team adjust. they tinker. They change things around when it's not working. Sheldon Keefe sticks to his guns, whether it's the power play, whether it's whatever, and just kind of sees, hopefully, that these guys get out of it. Something must have clicked, and he finally said, enough of this crap. I'm not getting any offense. Let's see, instead of moving my third and fourth line guys around, let's see if I can move some of my top guys around. And sure enough, look what happens. I'm not saying I'm smarter than an NHL coach, but listen, when I'm on the bench and I was coaching, if it's not working, you have to find a spark. It's coaching 101. So what happened in this Carolina game for him to finally say, you know what, let me move these guys around? And he finally broke up Matthews and Marner. That finally makes him understand, hey, listen, I don't have to start the game with a different lineup, but I can sure make adjustments in the game, and I can find something that works. For me, that's what I'm happy with. He doesn't have to stick with this, but at least he knows he can go to it when he needs it.
But what we never understood was, why didn't he know that beforehand? Because obviously he's seen the tape that Matthews and Nylander have played a lot before, and Tavares and Marner have played a lot before, and they were both successful with each of them. Mike Babcock, we used to get upset with him because he never would try Matthews and Marner together.
Correct.
And now it's the complete opposite. We get upset with Keith because he never wants to split up Matthews and Marner and go back to the Tavares, Marner, and Matthews Nylander pairing. Finally does it on Sunday, and you're absolutely right. That was the spark they needed. It was a much better lineup once he made that adjustment.
And not only that, he actually did move Robertson from the third line up with Tavares and Marner. So they do see Robertson obviously in a long-term role, be it a top six forward. And I'm happy they did that. And Bunting wasn't pulling his weight, and they moved him down to the third line, which, hey, I'm sorry, sometimes you deserve it. And I haven't been thrilled with the way he's been playing. He's not getting, he's not playing that
dog on a bone.
I don't want to call him Marchand light, because that's not really fair, because Marchand's incredible.
But he is that type of player. Yeah,
he is. And
gets under your skin.
He's not effective.
Yeah, gets under your skin. He's like a dog on a bone, like on the puck, just relentless. We've seen games of it. We just hasn't been as consistent as it was last year.
But I'll tell you, the thing that I take most of that game out from the Carolina game, it's the reverse of the Boston game. Your top guys came to play. They won you that game. The Carolina game, you're right, Joe, was sluggish. They didn't get the start they wanted. Kudos to the third and fourth line especially, that set the table for the top line to finally put the game away. That fourth line, which we'll get into, to me was kind of, if they can rally something around it, that fourth line for me is the straw that stirs the drink here. And I'm pretty impressed with what they've done so far. I'm not saying it's going to be, the world beater here, but at least it's something that they can use as a constant line, as something that gives them some energy, something that can give us some minutes. And maybe, if they catch the wrong deep pairing on at a time, maybe can add some offense in here and there as well. So be interesting to see what they do with Malgin moving forward.
I'm glad you brought that up. So let's use that to segue into the good, the bad, and the leafy. So let's talk about that fourth line. I know that was your good right there. You kind of broke it down right there. So we got the Kempf, Denis Malgin, Gino Malgin, as some radio hosts like to refer to him. I love that nickname. And Zach Aston Reese has been this fourth line. They've looked pretty damn good since they've been put together. And I got some advanced stats for you. I like advanced stats and analytics.
We don't do stats here, but it's okay. Throw them on me, man.
Let's give some credit to Denis Malgin here, because this was a guy who I thought was a top six or out of the lineup type guy. Can't be in your bottom six.
I admit that as well.
But I actually think he's much more suited to play in the bottom six, because what he adds to the bottom six currently, we don't have enough of. He adds some speed and some transition skating, which they need more of. He shoots the puck an awful lot, which they need more of. And for a little guy, he's rather tenacious. And nobody expected that. Everybody thought he was like very soft, and everybody made fun of Dubas for this trade. You traded a gritty guy like Marchment for a soft puppy like Malgin. But give credit to the guy, man. He's not afraid to throw his weight around. He gets in there, and he is tough on the puck.
Well, if I'm Denis Malgin, I'm saying to myself, this is probably my last crack at the NHL. Even though he probably knows he's got a cushiony spot in Switzerland somewhere. But if he kind of sees the writing on the wall that, he's been scratched, and when he's not playing, it's obviously doesn't benefit him. He's got to find an identity on this team. And if it's going to be on the fourth line, if it's going to be 8-9 minutes a night, he's got to make those 8-9 minutes the best he can. And when he does that, and the Leafs do shuffle lines, they know he can play up there. He's a skilled player. But you're right, Joe. He's adjusted his game to show some tenacity, some on the forecheck. And he's got a great set of hands. If you see that breakaway goal he scored, was it the Golden Knights? I can't remember. The one he scored, he went backhand.
I think it was the Ducks, to be honest.
The Ducks, sorry. Backhand, top corner. He's got some hands, man. So then you got to look over your shoulder. Who's he battling for a spot right now? Is it Simmons? Maybe.
It's not Obe Kubel anymore.
And that's the thing. Sometimes when that happens, it kind of breathes a sigh of relief. You know what I mean? So maybe he's playing a little bit less, looking over his shoulder type of idea. But you're right. If he can, that 8-9 minutes and playing on that second power play unit, kind of seems like, I don't want to make the comparison, but he kind of reminds me a little bit of the Jason Spezza mold that they were trying to do last year, giving a little bit of offense on that fourth line, because Spezza was not a fourth liner per se in terms of his offensive creativity. But if Malgin can fill that role and provide a little bit of that offensive spark, that would be a nice little find.
And the cherry on top of him playing in the bottom six is he gets to play against weaker competition usually. Exactly. Which is even better for his game. I mentioned the advanced stats, and then I went off on a little tangent. I listen to this. So, Gino Malgin, as they like to refer to him, this guy leads the team in expected goals percentage. So basically, he's got the highest percentage of when he's on the ice, they're creating way more chances than they're giving up. He's got the highest goals per 60. So if you take all the minutes that they've played, if you played 60 minutes, he's averaging the most goals per 60 minutes of ice time. He's third on the team in shots per 60 minutes. And this is, I think, the kicker here. David Kempf's line without Denis Malgin, 44% expected goals. So they're giving up more than they're getting. With Malgin on his line, they're at 78% expected goals. That's 80% of their shifts are played in the offensive zone. That is what you want from a fourth line.
So Denis Malgin has a little bit more of an impact than we thought here. So let's not pump the tires.
Is it Denis or is it Dennis?
I like to call him Dennis, but
the menace.
I don't want to inflate the tires too much, because then we're going to look like we're fanboys here. But it's a nice piece, man. Like I didn't think he would be able to. I thought this was going to be another, he's going to hit waivers and he's going to ask for his release back to Switzerland. But this could be something, they need that, Joe. We were on this episode last week saying they got nothing from that bottom six last week. And here we are, finally. They're getting some some support there. So listen, man, just keep doing what you're doing.
Absolutely. And another good thing in part of the good of this team, their defensive play has been much better this last 3-game stretch. The last 2 games, they allowed only 2 goals against 2 of the better offensive teams in the league, both of which those goals were not at 5-on-5. So give credit to them. I thought Lijlegren, since he's been back, has just filled in beautifully. It looks like he hasn't skipped a beat, hasn't missed a step at all. He played awesome. And let's give a little credit to Justin Hall, because the guy just got torched during that road trip by this fan base.
Deservedly so.
Yeah, deservedly so. Absolutely. But when a guy deserves criticism, you can give it to him. But when he deserves praise, you got to give it to him as well. He was paired up with Brody for much of the last few games, and that pairing did very well. Justin Hall is not afraid to block shots. And any guy that is willing to put his body on the line to step in front of a 100-mile-an-hour slapper, I give him some credit there. I do not want to do that.
Can I say one thing about Lijlegren? I'm praying to the hockey gods the one thing this team has been looking for as long as Riley has been in this lineup is a right-handed defenseman to play right beside him. And I hope to God that Timothy Lijlegren develops into that, because what a find that would be. A homegrown defenseman that you've selected in the first round, that you've developed, turns into a top 4. I'm not saying he's a top 2 defenseman. What I'm saying is someone that can stabilize Morgan Riley on that right side, because you wouldn't have to really trade for one after. You can probably trade for a top 4. Listen, a top 4 defenseman is a lot easier to trade for than a top pairing defenseman. So
absolutely,
I'm hoping for that growth.
And he's got that potential, I think, if he keeps going along this trajectory, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's go with the bad now. It was much tougher to choose the bad this week because there was much less bad, whereas last week it was tough to choose the bad because there was so much that was bad. What do you have for us this week?
I think it's glaringly obvious, the plan for Nick Robertson. It's concerning to me. Same as mine. Very concerning. Listen, at 21 or 22 years old, he's getting close to that threshold for me to being like, either you're in or you're out. Either you're going to be a full-time NHLer because you're a second-round pick, or you got to go back to the Marlies, which we really don't want to do, or we put you in a trade. But I don't think we're there yet. But if you're going to take a young player like that and sit him out, it's for learning purposes. You watch the game, you watch the game, you're out, you use what you've learned, come back to practice, you're in the next game. They've been sitting them for 2 or 3 games at a time. What is that really doing? Now, if they would have lost against the Bruins, I think that would have been a fair statement that, Simmons got in. It should have been Robertson, but maybe it's a tougher opponent. You want that muscle, and they won, so you can't really criticize the move.
Yep.
But moving forward, Robertson has to play. Like, if you're looking for, they started on the third line with Engvall and Järnkrok. For me, that's like putting a square peg in a round hole. He just doesn't fit on that line. But that lineup went against Carolina. So what do you do against Vegas? Do you go back with Robertson or do you go back with Simmons? Times, that's going to show. For me, he adds an element that, you need more shooters in that lineup.
Yep.
You need more guys to shoot, and Robertson can shoot the puck. The defensive game will come along, but he needs to be in that lineup. Find him a spot.
I see both sides of the argument where you shouldn't send him back down to the AHL because he's already dominated down there. But then I also see, like, he's just got to play. And if you're going to sit him in the press box, he's better off playing at the Coca-Cola Coliseum, getting 20 minutes than sitting in the press box. That's where I'm at with him. You can still develop him. And this is why I thought you had a really good, bold prediction at the beginning of the season, was that he might be the guy to get traded to acquire that extra piece. And if he's along this trajectory where he's a fringe lineup player for the rest of the season, it could be one of those where a team wants to take a chance on him, right? They see the potential. Okay, we want that guy in the deal, and the Leafs are willing to do it at that point. Only time will tell. It should be interesting the rest of the way, but I agree he should be in the lineup and getting more opportunities. I would really, like you mentioned, he started off on that third line with Järnkrok and Engvall. Wasn't crazy about that line at all, but when he was with Mitch and Tavares, really liked that line. So I would prefer them to actually start the lineup like that, but Keefe is not going to do that.
I'm last thing on this for me. I'm kind of in a catch-22. I want to say this politely and kind of because I want them to succeed. But when I see Kerfoot on that first line, and I'm saying to myself, what can Kerfoot do that Robertson can't? And I'm saying, why can't they just put Kerfoot where he's slated to be on that third line with Engvall and Järnkrok? Like, that's the fit for me. If Keefe wants a shutdown line, a little bit of offense, man, imagine Robertson beside Matthews and Nylander. Oh my God. Like that's where he's got to play, right? So you're putting, again, we talked about putting players in a position to fail. I'm putting Robertson on a third line, which is usually looked at as a checking line or shutdown line, playing with a guy who's not really a natural center in Engvall. Yarncroc I have no issues with. For me, he's a solid player, but like that's putting a player in a position to fail. That's why I think he should be in that top 6. But
and that's why you're a coach, Frankie. That's why. All right, the Leafy. What do you got for this week for the Leafy?
Oh man, I really got to get out of the prediction game because, again, I'm not going to sit here. I'm a Leaf fan, but I'm not going to say, yeah, I knew they were going to beat the Bruins. I knew that. No, man. I expected them to get, have their lunch fed to them by the Bruins, only to have it fed again to them against Carolina, knowing that Kallgren had that start in Carolina. It just didn't sit well with me. How Leafy is it that they walk into Anaheim, San Jose, or they play Arizona, can't beat those 3 teams, yet they play probably one of the toughest back-to-backs you'll ever see against the Bruins, the best team in the league, and Carolina at an early start time. They weren't taking the bus to Ottawa. They weren't flying to Buffalo. They were flying to Raleigh, North Carolina after the night before with their 3rd and 5th string goalie and win both games. Does it get any more Leafy than that? And now suddenly things are back to normal. The house isn't falling. I'm not there yet, but it doesn't get any more Leafy than that.
The swings in this market are crazy. Like even John Tortorella, when he was in here last week, made fun of it. He's like, you guys are talking about must-win game. It's game 10 of the season. Like, give me a break. And he's right. He's absolutely right. But when you have a tough stretch and this team has high expectations, people start losing their minds, start talking about firing the coach and the GM. And
can I add, you have one?
Yes, I do. I do have one. Doesn't match yours, but
I'll give you a bonus one, but go ahead.
My Leafy is your starting goaltender who was playing great, getting hurt on a penalty shot. On a penalty shot that shouldn't have been a penalty shot to begin with, I thought. There was no way he was on a clear breakaway. It should have been a trip for sure. And then they would have got on a 5-on-3 and they would have scored on the 5-on-3. It's just the leafiness of, this guy looks so great and your goalie shouldn't get hurt on a penalty shot, but lo and behold, that's what happened.
Honorable mention for my Leafy. William Nylander scores one of the hardest working goals at the end of a 2.5-minute shift. And all the Nylander haters are like, what? Does it get any more Leafy than William Nylander scoring a hardworking goal on Freddie Anderson? And is that not the most Freddie Anderson goal he lets in?
That's Leafy also.
That's Leafy. So.
And who scored the goal for Carolina? Stefan Noesen, a former Leaf. Always happens.
Always.
Too good.
Amazing.
All right, so let's look ahead. This week, they play the Vegas Golden Knights, who arguably could be the best team in the league as well. When they were in Vegas 2 weeks ago, the Knights just handed them a butt kicking. So it'd be nice to see the Leafs give it right back to them. They got them on Tuesday at home, and then they have a back-to-back on the weekend, hosting Pittsburgh on Friday and then hosting the Canucks on Saturday. What are you looking forward to this week?
I really don't have a thing about the Vegas game. That's a Tuesday night in Toronto with Vegas in town. Those are one of those, games. But I thought they played, oddly enough, I'm not sure if I'm assuming he's going to play again, but Logan Thompson played very well for Vegas that last game. And I think the Leafs got a little bit unlucky with some of the posts. So I think for me, that's a toss-up game. But again, a Tuesday night, it just doesn't give that same vibe as a Saturday night against the Bruins. The back-to-back games with Pittsburgh and Vancouver are interesting with me because you're playing two desperate hockey teams.
Yes.
Two desperate hockey teams that were in a funk with Canucks, and they're kind of coming out of it now, but their GM just tore them a strip today on their local radio and not giving confidence to their head coach. So that, there's something there where that could be a motivating factor in that dressing room. So I'm kind of worried about the Canucks because Demko, last time we watched him, Demko goalied them. If you remember in the bubble.
The Leafs have struggled with the Canucks since the bubble because they've typically outshot them and outchanced them, but Demko plays very well against them.
And they don't play Pittsburgh well either. If you remember the men's league roster that Pittsburgh put out the last couple of times they played the Leafs. But again, they're on a skid. And if you want to talk about Leafy, if you're in a slump, you play the Leafs.
Come to Toronto. We'll help you out.
So I don't want to get negative here. I don't really see a lot of points. I really hope I'm wrong. But if they have found this rallying point like they did last year, November was very kind to them. So honestly, Joe, I think it's a 50-50 flip. I'll be happy with 3 of 6 points, to be honest with you.
I think they get 4. I think they're going to beat Vegas tomorrow on Tuesday. I think they'll lose to the Penguins on Friday because you said they're in a slump and the Leafs will help them get out of it. And then I actually think they'll take care of the Canucks on Sunday. So
it's in Pittsburgh Friday, Saturday at home?
No, they're both home games.
Oh, wow. So Keith Petroselli might play his first home game.
And that's what I'm looking forward to.
First game at home.
That's right. They had to sign him because of the Samsonov injury. He was on an AHL deal only. And funny enough, when the Leafs put Abe-Kubel on waivers and he got claimed, it actually worked out perfectly for them because they were at the max 50 standard player contracts. And losing him allowed them to sign Petroselli. So now he's the backup, and he's been really solid for the Marlies. He's currently 6-0 with a 920-something save percentage. So he's a big goalie, 6'5", right? So I want to see him between the pipes on Saturday, see what he's made of.
They were actually after him a lot. He was actually highly touted, and it was between them and the Red Wings. So they have a plan for him. They like this guy.
The Red Wings did draft him actually, third round. Yeah.
So I'm gonna end you with I have one for you. Just a yes or a no, a puck yeah, puck no. How we do it? Who would you rather have? Erik Kallgren or Jack Campbell?
At their current contracts?
At their current contract, current numbers, current everything.
I'm taking Erik Kallgren because I don't want Jack Campbell for 4.5 more years at $5 million. Wow. And I'm sure there's a lot of Oiler fans out there who would agree. But like I mentioned earlier, remember when everybody said that the Oilers' goaltending was solved? Meanwhile, last year when the Leafs were going with Campbell, there were so many question marks. Whatever. You know how media spins the narratives in this country.
Love it.
But everyone loves the Leafs, right? Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Everyone, thanks again for tuning in to this episode. We'll be back at you next week. Hopefully, Bobby will be back as well. He had to work tonight. Poor little guy. And again, thanks for tuning in. If you could hit that subscribe button, we really appreciate it. We've got a lot of comments and feedback. We appreciate that as well. Just keep it coming, boys, and we'll keep. I
just want to let you know we have some upcoming guests coming up soon, so I'll we'll put that out on the Twitter machine on our handle at the Puckin Leafs on Twitter. So we got some lined up, and we'll let you know who they are coming soon. So keep your eye out for that.
Ooh, exciting times! Looking forward to it. All right, everybody, have a great night. Let's go Leafs.